of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Pedicini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Cronulla Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me is my good mate, Sixties. We have a very busy weekend ahead of us, mate, and it is busy because there are 6 games on the docket, and we're going to be talking about 3 of those in this podcast. We're previewing the Jersey Flegg, New South Wales Cup, and of course the NRL. And unfortunately, mate, it's going to be clashing with our other preview podcast on the weekend, or the games in the focus of our other preview podcast, rather, in the 3 junior representative grand finals. But for now, we've got an open little window to talk about those 2 sets of games, starting with the senior football, mate, where we have the Parramatta Eels taking on the Cronulla Sharks in all 3 senior grades. Before we talk football, though, as always, how you doing?
Mate, yeah, doing very well. We're really juggling when we're getting these podcasts done because, as usual, we're up to about 5 podcasts a week that we're doing to try to cover junior reps and NRL and lower grades and news and instant reactions and special interviews. So it really is a jam-packed time for us at the moment. We've got more podcast recordings that we're doing tonight, tomorrow, and then, of course, we'll have our instant reaction after the game on Friday night. So, and then we've got the live blogs happening on Saturday with the junior reps. And as you mentioned then, unfortunately, there's a clash between the lower grades and the junior representative grand finals. And of course, we are going to prioritise the grand finals because they are quite historic.
But it's high caliber games in the Flegg and the Cup this week too. So big opportunity cost there.
Look, we'll catch those lower grade matches on replay and give our feedback on those. But before we go any further, John, we'll do a shout out and a thanks to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narelle and Parramatta. Greg and the team doing a great job. And I noticed maybe Greg's, like I've seen he's actually been hitting the gym really hard, Greg. Mate, you're aiming for a comeback at some stage very soon. I think he plays in a touch team, but he's... Greg's been hitting the gym, so well done, Greg. Better man than I am, mate, that's for sure. And, of course, Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. And don't forget whether it's home matches, which is a massive day for the club, or away games where you might like to gather with fellow supporters and watch the Eels games on the big screen in Sturlos. It is the home of the Eels. So support Parramatta Leagues Club because they not only are they the owners of the Eels team, but they also put in hundreds of thousands of dollars into the juniors. And I think we get results like we do with the junior reps because of the way that Parramatta Leagues Club makes junior rugby league affordable for young people and families. So the more young people that we've got playing rugby league, the better it is for the community anyway, because junior rugby league clubs turn young people into great citizens, and they also keep that talent coming through into senior football. So shout out there. John, also a thank you to our viewers, and don't forget as well, whether you're watching this or listening to it on one of our platforms, if you can give it a like and subscribe. Mentioned in our news podcast that our live instant reaction has been proving incredibly popular on YouTube. We've hit that 1,000 viewers mark to the live podcast. We are trying to grow YouTube as a platform for us, so we appreciate all of the people that are watching on that platform, and also those people who have taken the time to subscribe. And don't forget as well, you can support us by becoming a patron. So we've got the Patreon links on our website. Just click on that, and it allows you to then go and pledge $5 a month to the Cumberland Throw, and it helps us to keep producing the content that we've made for 10 years for all of you supporters. So, without any further ado, mate, let's get into the previews of the matches.
Yeah, and it's a very big docket this week because obviously the Eels in the NRL hunting that back-to-back breakthrough win there in Magic Round. But before that, two huge games in the Jersey Flegg and the New South Wales Cup, two top four clashes. Top of the table stuff here for the Eels and the Sharks. And we start at 12:50 p.m. out at the famous Henson Park with the Cronulla Sharks in fourth place hosting the Parramatta Eels in third for the Jersey Flegg Cup. And the Eels come into this one on the back of a good comeback victory against South Sydney. A couple of changes to the team that we mentioned in that team or the News and Team List podcast 60s. So I'll go through the team quickly and then see how it matches up. At fullback, moving in there from the wing this week is Bradley Avery. Obviously, Arpatuidal injured that wrist at 60s, and I'm not sure what happened to Jaden Mbechi, but Bradley has done a good job filling in at fullback in the emergency role during a game, and I'm keen to see what he can do with a week of prep there. Muhammad Al-Madeen comes back from the New South Wales Cup. He had one game there last week against South Sydney. He goes back to his preferred position on the left wing there, with Dakota Kakoi holding his place on the opposite flank after starting the comeback for the Parramatta Eels with their first try last week. Tavaka Palu and Richard Penasini, very familiar names there in the centres 60s. Two very good talents there. We all know what Richie's capable of, but Tavaka's had himself a really nice start to the year. Big, powerful body out in that left edge. In the halves, Matty Hunter, and we've seen this every Team List Tuesday. Named initially was Cooper Fuller, but Joshua Lynn has come into that Team List now 60s, and that's Parramatta's preferred pairing in that 6 and 7 spot this year. Lynn obviously very experienced in both Flegg and Cup now, and Matty Hunter, not a bad young player too. He's quietly been racking up the try assist and the line break assist this year, having himself a good start to the season. In the front row, you've got Damascus Nemia partnering Igeti Samuelu. Jack Hudson comes back into the team after missing last week. That gives the Eels a big boost at the dummy half position, of course. Damascus not partnering his traditional bookend there in Tiankin Brown because he's been promoted. And gives Yeti Samuelu, a player who's been outstanding off the interchange for the Eels 60s, a chance to impose himself in those opening exchanges. Keen to see how he handles that, obviously on replay, because we won't be able to watch it live. On the edges, it's Dom Destratus and Will Lewis. Important to note here, 60s, that Will Lewis probably starts on the left edge, because that's where he came into the game last week. And that has been Dom's domain for most of this season, but he obviously has that positional flexibility to be able to switch sides without compromising too much of his contributions, given that we've seen him play right centre as much as our right edge. So he'll switch sides there to the right edge and allow Will to play down the left. Tyrese Lakini moves from the edge to the lock forward role. Then on the interchange, we have 3 players named and the concussion sub here, so you have to take a guess on who the 4th player is. But Paddy Spence, that super utility for the Eels, Ralph Destratus and Seb Piacala rounding out the 3 named players. Kurt Fisher listed as the 18th man. There is a blank spot in the 17 there. Just looking who it could be. Maybe Javon Stevenson-Hala might back up again. I'm not sure if the Eels have someone coming back from injury last week because they've got a couple of players up in the New South Wales Cup. There's any number of options they could put into that number 17 slot there. It might just be Kurt Fisher, but usually when there's that vacant or blank slot on the Team List 60s with an 18th man, it means that someone will come into the team on game day. So you have to wait and see.
Yeah. John, we've probably spoken about it ad nauseum with regard to the change in fortunes of the Jersey Flegg, the relative starts of the season last year to this year, where at this point last year, I think we were only just about to record the first win of the season. And so, we started 0-7, so then we were 1-7, whereas this year, we've had the one washout. But what are we, 6-1 at this stage? So it's a massive difference for the Eels. We came home like a steam train last year, probably the form team of the competition. I would have actually backed us to go close to winning the competition last year,
agree.
were it not for us falling 1 point short of making the finals. And it just so happened that I think the team that kept us out of the finals was a team that went on a run themselves, which was the Sharks last year. So this gives us a little bit of a revenge clash, if you like. And it's also a good measure of exactly where the team is at. Obviously, there's the team has been impacted by elevations and injuries, but they're still motoring along just as strongly as they have been all season. A little bit of a hiccup in the first half last week against South. It was almost like they weren't switched on to the game in that first half last week. Some uncustomary errors. It was just that first half wasn't them. The second half was closer to what we've come to expect, and as a consequence, they ran over the top of South in the second half. But John, there's plenty to like about the team. I mean, you've got players there who have been called up for New South Wales Cup in recent times. You've got players who could easily play New South Wales Cup now. And just a few weeks down the track, they'll be bolstered by the SG ball players who will be
win or lose now. There's that sort of 2 to 3 week window where they're going to be the ball players will be integrated into the Flegg program and start to filter through.
And we should also mention some of those ball players were involved in the pre-season.
So they won't be unfamiliar, exactly.
Yeah, so they're not going to be unfamiliar. Yes, there were. And for example, we saw the players who were the Australian schoolboys. They were involved in the Flegg pre-season. So it's going to be. I think it's a big year ahead for the Jersey Flegg team. This week, as I said, big test for the team. And I think it's going to be a tight contest, mate, because, the Sharks have been traditionally strong in these lower grades. So where do you see this game heading?
Yeah, I think this is a big test for Parramatta. They've played a lot of great football. And even the game they lost, 60s, they were in that into their eyeballs. So they could have feasibly been undefeated on the season quite comfortably. But Sharks and Eels when we've spoken about it in years gone by, there's a little rivalry here in the juniors up to the Jersey Flegg, it feels like, between the Eels and Cronulla, given how many times they've met through the junior reps in big games and some of the fiery encounters. And speaking of fiery, I do see Nakora Williams lining up in the centres for the Sharks. 60s, obviously a very talented player in their pathways, but a very fiery character. And the Eels and he have had some choice words and physical encounters in the past. It'll be interesting to see what the emotions are like on Saturday.
And they have to go back 2 years to a finals clash in junior reps. And I think he ended up being sent to the sin bin.
I think it was Aidan Kaborian who managed to get under his skin, who's playing that SG Ball Grand Final on Saturday. And, he got put into the bin. And that was the Eels were ahead at that point anyway, but that was very important to seal the deal against the good Sharks team. Look, Taj Ford, I believe, Richard Whalebone, they've got a couple of really good players here. There is a former Eel there, Jai Camilleri, 60s, who left us mid-season, actually. And he's obviously picked up a role there as a starting dummy half for Cronulla. This will be a good game. And the Eels are probably more tested in terms of depth than they have been through most games. They've got more change in the back row. And look, Will Lewis did a great job. I thought he was very good coming off the bench, and I do like Will as a prospect. Tall, rangy back rower, good athleticism. The fact that he wasn't there as an initial starter probably speaks more to the depth that the Eels have in that position more than anything else. But down one of their starting bookends, a bit of rotation in the back line too with Dakota Kakoi getting his shot here now as a starter. There's enough instability there to think that the Eels might not be at their best. But even then, just the way that they've bought in under Jordan Rankin and the way that they are playing, not even from 1 to 17, but from 1 to like 26. When you talk about those depth guys, there's every reason to think that they can come in here and get the job done. It's an away game. It's at Henson Park. I traditionally don't recall a lot of strong results for the Eels at Henson Park. I think we've spoken about this. It feels like whenever we go there, it's always on the back of a tough loss to the Jets or the Sharks. So getting the win here would be huge, and they're going to have to work hard for it. I do think the Sharks may be slight favourites because of that, just between the home field advantage and, or most of the home field advantage, but the fact they're also a good team coming into the game just one slot behind the Eels. But I would not be surprised if we get the win here.
Yeah, look, John, if we have traces of our first half last week, we won't win the game.
That is fair. I agree. The Sharks will pounce on that and rush out to a very strong lead. Yeah,
so that will probably be the the one thing that the coach will really guard against there, Jordan Rankin. For whatever reason, they just weren't on their game last week. And we saw like some strong players who were really, they were off with their timing. It was really clunky, that first half. He certainly got them to turn it around in the second. But we just need to make sure there's no trace of that against the Sharks. This is almost, for mine, a statement game that for the Jersey Flegg.
About your ambitions and sort of sending a message to your fellow competitors at the top of the ladder.
Yeah, because not only because they're playing a top team, but also because there has been those disruptions to the team over the last couple of weeks with injuries, elevations. Look, John, I think I have to stick with the Eels with this because they understand what winning is about this year. They understood it in the back half of last year, and they basically picked up where they left off last year. And look, that's no surprise because there's a lot of the same players have been available this year to do that, and where they've had some additions, they've very much been really positive additions to the team as well. So that now brings us to the New South Wales Cup game, where a team that it doesn't matter which club they partner with, the Newtown Jets, they are always one of the strong teams in this grade.
Yep. The Newtown Jets, whether it's been the Roosters, the Melbourne Storm, or more recently and for a good period now, the Cronulla Sharks, they have just been one of the best teams consistently, a top 4 finisher in this competition, 60s. We were saying in the green room, it's honestly a credit to the Jets organisation, alongside their partner NRL teams. Obviously, you can't do it without being a joint venture, but the fact that the Jets have stayed so relevant in reserve grade it's preserving a really cool part of rugby league history. And it does make it a mongrel reversum, I got to say. You never really want to be taking on the Jets. They always find a way to break hearts. The Eels, back in COVID, had a huge game in the final series that was done in by Billy Magoulias with a chip kick at the end. And some questionable officiating, has to be said. There was a couple of rough calls there. But Eels and the Jets here, 60s. It's 3 o'clock p.m. kickoff out at Henson Park, obviously a doubleheader at that famous venue. Eels, without the services of William McGregor and Tony Matteoli, they're both suspended. That I just noted that's in the actual team sheet update now. So confirmation there that both players did pick up at least a week off. Not surprising. There was a number of very aggressive plays they made late in that game against the Rabbitohs that were obviously put on report and then cited for punishment. But the Eels look like this as they take on the second-placed Jets coming in as the third-place team. So, again, a very, very good game on paper here. At fullback, we got Josh Papali. Jake Tungor is back after a few weeks out due to that hip injury, and he'll play down the left sideline. Hayes Dunstan named on that right sideline, but we do have to ensure that he does play 60s because he has been a late withdrawal last couple of games.
It's not going to surprise me for that to flip.
To flip around?
Yeah. Okay. Perhaps. But
well, yeah. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. Well, by way of replay, probably. but something to keep an eye on if you are watching this game live. But in the centres, young pairing here, Raz Namvo, who is Flegg eligible, but is holding his place down that left sideline or left edge in the centres, with Jordan Samrani down the right. And we've obviously spoken glowingly about Jordan's New South Wales Cup stint 60s. He has been probably among the best players in the competition. And he continues to build that resume for an eventual NRL return. In the halves, it's Ronald Volkman and Dean Hawkins, Parramatta's number one pairing in reserve grade.
They were very good. They were very good last
week.
week.
Very good, yes. We gave them a brief shout-out during the match breakdown, but they were heavily involved throughout the game, really controlled the contest and never gave South Sydney an opportunity. And you don't go to 32-6 at halftime without both your halves really stepping up. In the front row, because of those suspensions, we've got a couple of young guys getting the call. Kane Kalach, who's been very solid for the Eels off the interchange, will start alongside young gun Saxon Pryke, with Cruz Natili Schmidt at dummy half. So it's a very young front row trio there. Speaking of youngsters, what a name to have back in the lineup 60s. Will Latu should be operating down that left edge. Been out for, 5-6 weeks pretty comfortably now with that ankle sprain that I think he had back at round 1, round 2. Very good time for him to come back now. Chance to impress both Nathan Kalis and Jason Ryles with some strong performances in Cup starting this week. And he'll be on the edges opposite Bryce Cartwright, who had his best game of the season last week against the Rabbitohs. And then Ryan Madison rounds out that forward pack in the lock forward position. And we've got, what's happened to our bench here, 60s? Why are we missing a player? There it is there, I guess. So we've got 2 team lists on the Parramatta Eels website now, which is what got me confused. There's a Match Centre one and the official Team List Tuesday one. Named in the Match Centre is Manny Luke, Tiankin Brown, and Brock Parker. Missing is Felix Natili Schmidt from the Team List Tuesday post, so that's probably the 4th player in the interchange there. But Tiankin making his Cup debut, very deserved call-up 60s. We've been very impressed with him. And speaking of those young players in the Flegg, I can't imagine that Damascus Nemia is too long for that grade either. He's been excellent alongside Tiankin and probably gets, maybe not at the same time, maybe I'll rotate them, in that same slot. But I would expect that Damascus makes his Cup debut very soon as well. But they're taking on a very good Newtown Jets team. Former Eels prospect there, Michael Gabriel, out in the back line. I believe he's also 18th man or part of the extended roster for the NRL team. Rajab and Puru are a good halves pairing. Former Eels player Jonte Jr. Beth Meza. I think he went down to Melbourne at 1.60s, and now he's at the Sharks. You got Jaden Beryl. There's another Puru there in the lock forward role. Billy Magoulias, we just mentioned him. He's on the interchange, still sticking around in Cup. So not as many outright stars here for the Sharks as we've seen in the past, but still some very talented young players there. And I do have to say commiserations to poor Cade Dykes, who is out for the season again, 60s. I think it's his 3rd straight knee injury. We always speak about the Eels have had horrific luck, and obviously Hayes comes to mind immediately when you look at those 2 team lists. But so too, Cade Dykes is just a very talented young player, can't catch a break in any sort of good way.
And, of course, young Artie.
Yes, Yep, Artie
from
the exact same situation there. Talented player. There's an alternate path where he is playing NRL now because he's had his 2 years of apprenticeship in Cup, and instead he's just been back-to-back years being rolled out, and it just kills all the momentum a young talent can have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, this is a top-of-the-table clash, John. Another litmus test, if you like, for the Eels for how we're travelling this year. They've got some real consistency in their team. Maybe not so much in team selections because it's lower grades can be quite volatile with injuries, players coming back down with form or players coming up to fill in. So we've got a real combination of that this week because what have we got? So we've had Jake Tungor, who's played a bit of first grade earlier this year. We've had Samrani, Volkman and Hawkins with their time in first grade, Ryan Madison. So it's really it's a team that's got that experience behind it against a team that's got, I guess, some rising stars in it. Not that the Eels haven't got rising stars in their side as well. But I really like the consistency of form that this team has, John, because like the Jersey Flegg side, they've only dropped one game this season. And what you're starting to see with the junior reps and the lower grades is what the identity of Parramatta football is moving forward. So you've got all of the teams operating under, I guess you can say, similar systems, similar structures, which, of course, makes it easier for players to transition between grades, but also, places that identity on the team. Doesn't mean that you don't have moments where you're playing ad-lib football, you're playing unstructured football. And I guess the best example of that was in the last NRL match with Mitch Moses with that kick downfield for Bailey Simonson to score. That's that real heads up sort of stuff. And we're seeing evidence of that in the New South Wales Cup as well. We had Bryce Cartwright having a real carty party moment last week when I think it was an offload from Ryan Madison, who was basically swatting defenders away, got the ball to Cartwright. He spun away from defenders, and this is just in front of the post, looked across, and Sam Ranie's completely unmarked, and he's just chip-kicked as casually as you like over to the corner, and it's pinpoint accurate. So there's a back row forward who is outrageously talented, which Bryce Cartwright is. There's no denying that. It's always just a matter of, getting his consistency and application right. But he's one of the freakishly talented players in rugby league, and he just demonstrated that last week. If he keeps playing to that standard, then and shows that he can fit in with those moments in the Jason Ryles style of football, then who knows where that might lead later in the season. But you had both he and Ryan Madison playing their best football last week, which was really encouraging as far as not just the New South Wales Cup team, but that potentiality of being able to be called on throughout the season for NRL. John, I really like what this team is doing, because even the players who are Ron Massey Cup players most weeks, when they've been called up, they've delivered. So you've already mentioned with Kane Kalashi when he's been called on, the Nutili Schmidt brothers haven't let them down at all. We've been used to seeing Manny Luke called up now this is probably about the third season where he's been involved with the Eels through the association with
very,
20.
Very handy in that role. He's done a good job, yeah.
Yeah, so, John, I like what's being delivered. But as far as this game is concerned, apart from obviously enjoying watching it when we get round to it and looking for the win, the thing that interests me most, well, there's two things that interest me in this one. The return of Will Latu, because as you know, he's someone that we rate, and
he's someone that I think the coaches want to know where they're at with in terms of potential NRL recruitment and whatnot. Like, is Will their guy for next year? How much do they need to leverage his development, like projections, against signing a hedge in the NRL? So yeah, it's a big one there. One thing we didn't mention, those 60s, good and bad news for the Eels on the injury front in the New South Wales Cup. Brendan Hands, it wasn't a PCL, it was bone bruising. So he's projected to miss one more game, which is obviously very good for the team. On the bad news, though, Captain Dan Keir has done a thigh or a quadriceps injury, and he's out until rounds 11 or 12 based on club projections. So they lose a very experienced campaigner there in Dan Keir, who had a very good game last week, by the way, scored a try and has been an integral part of his team, obviously as its captain, but also as a very handy contributor across the park. So very short on experienced troops this week in the forward pack 60s, and that's my concern in the matchup.
Well, the other thing that I was looking forward to was, of course, Tiankin Brown.
Yes.
So Big T getting that run in New South Wales Cup. It'll be interesting to see how he goes in the open age. And again, as you said, with Jason Ryles getting a look at Will Latu and seeing where he's at, I think it's very much the same with Big T. So, it's...
I mean, obviously he's suspended, but Tony Mateo is in a similar situation. Tiankin Brown, absolutely. It is go time for these young guys. Maybe not so much for an NRL debut for Tiankin this year, but who knows? Maybe he tears it up and puts himself in the frame. Things that you can't always guess how things will play out. But big picture, the Eels, they're now in a situation where they need, or they want to be seeing these young guys putting their hands up to influence how they go on out and make their external signings. And
John, I need to pick you up too when you were running through the team list. I noticed that you didn't pronounce Saxon's name correctly because
and Dan's as well. Dan Kaye, I think it was, and our old Saxon Crikey mate.
Crikey.
Yeah. maybe it is Crikey, and we're just the ones doing it wrong.
Maybe they did their research that we haven't done. So
I mean, we have spoken to Saxon before, and he didn't call us up on it. So Saxon or Saxon's family members, if you are listening, please drop us a correction if we've been wrong. I do love the Bunnies TV guys, but I wasn't sure if they were doing, like I said to you, a 12th man bit there with Dan Keir and Saxon Pryke. But yeah, look, Saxon, he's having himself a really solid season, 60s, and being used as a prop rather than lock forward, although maybe that responsibility is being balanced against the big body that is Ryan Madison also playing in that middle trio. But being really solid. Had a great game earlier in the season against the Bulldogs, I think it was, where he was close to best on field and has been really handy elsewhere. So another young guy that is just building nicely towards a potential NRL debut.
Yeah, see, the thing was last year, John, that Saxon was just getting little snippets of New South Wales Cup, like he was selected on the bench, and he was probably only getting like 5 or 10 minutes at the end of games. So there wasn't really much of a chance for him to show what he does best, which is he's a big motor player. You know, his strength is really
he'll give you 30 tackles. He'll give you 100 meters of tough, no nonsense runs in a given week with the opportunities. Yeah, he's a
So he's now settling into that groove of being able to produce that at New South Wales Cup level, because he's produced at a Jersey Flegg level. He produced it during junior reps. So that's his identity as a player. Now, whether the coaches will have KPIs for him to extend what he does, that's obviously, something that we're not privy to. But John, in this one, again, I've got to tip the Eels, but I do so with all levels of respect for Newtown in this grade, and not just as the feeder team for the Sharks, but their identity as a club, which, as we pointed out, has gone through all other associations with other clubs as well. It seems to be that there is a pride in wearing the Newtown jersey, and they continue to get that great crowd. All the people punch their tickets to come back every week to get the identical crowd figure.
I was about to make the joke of every time you go there, was it like 6,000 blah blah blah?
No, I think it's like 8,722 or something like that, whatever it is.
The first time I went there, and this was damn near a decade ago, I was like, "What the hell are they talking about?" Like the ground announcer's obviously been drinking, and then obviously quickly clued into the significance of that figure and the last ever official attendance for the Newtown Jets there. So it's there it is. It's 8,972. There you go.
There you go. I knew it was 8,000.
Just a tick under 9K. Yeah. So a fun little factoid there for Henson Park. And look, 60s. I will say that obviously two very balanced teams coming into this one. This could be low key a very significant game. Just that feeling of momentum. You know, the Sharks / the Jets have always been a real tricky team in this grade. Consistently one of the premiership contenders, and they've always managed to get the Eels at Henson Park. So if they secure the win this week, that's a big one. That is a very, very big result, and they've certainly got the talent there to do it. I am a little concerned that it's not a lack of talent, because guys like Kane and Saxon and Tiancum and Brock are all very good middle forwards, but a little a little short on the experience there in the front row, and that might be something that the Sharks or the Jets could exploit. Though in saying that, I do like Jonte as a player, but he's not a vastly experienced New South Wales Cup middle. Jesse Colquhoun as well is, again, a decent player, but not a monster New South Wales Cup middle. So maybe that won't be as big an issue as I'm sort of making out to be. And hopefully the Eels can get the win here, mate.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, now this brings us to Friday night's game. So we're only talking 2 days away now.
Yeah, we record on a Wednesday, which is ahead of our usual schedule. And
we should point out when this is Wednesday morning, so you're seeing all the early morning hair and pretty ordinary throat, throat clearing and what have you. It's early in the morning. It's so apologies that things might look or sound a little bit rougher than usual, but that's just what we're having to do to try to squeeze the podcasts in this week. So,
and as,
John,
as Pilot would paraphrase Pilot's song, it's magic round, you know. And yes,
absolutely. So, I'll get you to run through the Sharks team, John.
Yeah, Cronulla Sharks coming into this one. What is their ladder position? I hadn't even checked that. They come into this one in 7th after absolutely bombing GIF 2 points against the West Tigers. Will Kennedy, I believe he's still on top of the Dally M standings. He's had himself a career year in the number 1 role there for the Sharks. He'll be in their fullback position. Sam Stonestreet and Renato Molitalo are on the wings. Jesse Ramian and what I thought was a typo initially, Kyle Iro, is now KL Iro, much like the Indian Test batsman. So I'm not sure. There is a story there behind the significance of the initials, but he's now officially KL, the 2 consonant 60s, Iro.
So is that a clue to how to pronounce his first name?
Yes. Well, I believe it's still been pronounced Kyle or KL, so KL there. And just, he's cutting out the 3 middle sort of vowels, or I guess Y is a pseudo vowel. He's going all consonants there. And moving on there, we've got Braden Trindle and Nicholas Hines in the halves. Adam Fanua-Blake, their big off-season recruit in the front row. He'll partner former Eel Oregon Kafusi. Blake Brayley at dummy half. Britton Okora avoided suspension 60s for his high shot or shoulder charge against the Tigers. He just got a fine. He lines up against the Eels with Billy Burns on the other edge. Cam McInnes at lock forward. On the interchange, the super utility Dan Atkinson, Sio Sifatalakai, Braden Haminueli, and Thomas Hazelton. Of note there is Hazelton, Uele and Iro are coming back. They weren't in the team against the Tigers, so they bolster the Sharks for Magic Round. Extend the roster, Jaden Beryl, Tuku Hao Tapua, Jesse Colquhoun, Hohepa Puru, and Michael Gabriel. There you go. So Gabriel was part of the extended Teamless team, not the 18th man. So he does edge closer to an eventual NRL debut, but he's still behind a pretty stacked backline there, 60s. Before we get to the Eels, worth noting that officials in this game, Peter Goff and Chris Butler, it's a little bit of a gun to the head situation for Peter Goff, 60s. For those that aren't familiar, Eels have played 24 games, I think, under Peter Goff. Won 5, lost 19, 37.5% win rate. So not great signs ahead of kickoff, but you can't let that poison the cloud too, or poison your vision too much. Because with the Parramatta Eels 60s, we'll go through their team list quickly. The one change, and also that positional or jersey swap. At fullback, though, Isaiah Yongi, he was never going to be changed. He's been killing it at the fullback position for the Eels. Bailey Simonson and Josh Adokar, for whatever reason, have swapped jerseys, or at least on Team West Tuesday they swapped jerseys. Will Penasini and Sean Russell in their preferred alignments on the right and left edge, respectively. Dylan Brown works with Mitchell Moses once again, and we're hoping to see the best out of Dylan again because of it. He was vastly improved on the back of Mitch's return last game, but not last week, and then we tripped over there. Jack Williams meets his former team starting in the front row, and he'll partner Junior Barlaw. Riley Smith at lock forward. The big change this week, Kelma Tuilagi suspended, which has opened the door for Charlie Guymer to get that start on what we presume is the right edge, with Gideon Katonga on the opposite side of the field. Jermaine Hopgood's lock forward, and then on the interchange, which has been very good for the Eels this year, Dylan Walker, Luca Moretti, Matt Dury, and Big Sam Tuivasa extend the roster. Ryan Madison, Joash Papali, Dean Hawkins, Bryce Cartwright, and Jordan Samrani. Worth noting there in that extended roster 60s, I'm sure it doesn't mean much for Madison and Cartwright because they're not playing NRL, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Jason Ryles has put them on that extended roster on the back of good performances in the New South Wales Cup, and I think, if anything, it's a small indication to the players, like, hey, you put your hands up and I will put you in the mix.
Yeah. Look, without doubt, that was the best performances of both players last week, in best performance of this season, just to clarify. But, John, you've got, I mean, it's not ideal that you get any change in a winning team. So it's a shame that Kelma had probably his best performance of the season as well last week, and then ends up being suspended. But that's the nature of the game this season, that they're picking up on any level of contact with the head, regardless of circumstance. And every team's just having to wear it at the moment, with a few notable exceptions that don't ever seem to get suspended, but that's or get very light suspensions, but that's a whole other topic that maybe we shouldn't dive down the rabbit hole of. John, what I'm liking about the Eels at the moment is that all of a sudden, with Mitch Moses there, we've confined the shapes that we've practiced and trained towards doing throughout the whole preseason and in every week of the season thus far. The things that have just been mostly absent were suddenly there. And that's not really any anomaly in terms of having your captain and halfback back in the team. It's like there's we talked about the influence of Mitch Moses, and maybe the greatest thing that he allows is for players to really focus on what their role should be and have the confidence to do so. The Eels just looked different, not just in attack, but also in defence. And really, Moses, one of his biggest plays last week was that tackle where, yes, he got penalised, but he stopped what was a certain try with that tackle in the corner.
The sheer physical effort to drive
the
player into touch. That was young Laulili, wasn't it, down that side?
Yes.
Not many players, let alone halves, make that play. And again, Moses is such a fascinating player we're obviously hugely subjective when it comes to this because of how much we as fans of the Blue and Gold will elevate his game. But quantifying Mitch's influence on the team is so difficult, isn't it? Because he is a legitimate floor and ceiling raiser. And what we saw from the Parramatta Eels in that game against the Tigers, down, as we said, 12 and then 11 men at one point, if Mitch hadn't been there, we fall apart with like 12 and 12, let alone 12 and 11. And his ability to, and the stats will never show this, but his ability to organise the team, not just in possession, but defensively, and rally the troops in that regard, the stat sheet doesn't reflect how important that is. And completely different team with him in it as opposed to when he's been away. That is a blessing and a curse, isn't it? Because you know if your team's going to be worse without your best player, you'd like them to be a little less ragged, I suppose. But again, just a reflection of how crucial Moses is to this team and how much he has grown, not as an individual playmaker, which he has, but as a leader. and he truly is the leader of his team now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what that does is it unlocks Dylan Brown to be Dylan Brown.
Yep.
It means that someone like Dylan Walker is adding more cream to the Eels, to their performance. Because I think Dylan Walker has been an outstanding piece of recruitment for the club.
Yep.
There's been plenty of criticism for the Eels recruitment in recent years, but if you look at the players that they've added for this season, so you're talking about Iongi at fullback, you're talking about the Fox on the wing, Jack Williams, Kotonga, Dylan Walker,
Sam
and
Roney.
then that's not even then touching on the depth additions or the future potential of someone like Jordan Samrani, having backup halves there.
Josh
and
Papali at
Hawkins
fullback.
Hawkins, Volkman, Papali at fullback. I mean, this has been, I think, probably the best season of recruitment that we've seen from the Eels. And again, there was, people are still being critical of what's happened in recruitment, and there's a way to go, because I think we have to add a star or two to the team to get us towards premiership contention. But you can see that these have been very specific, targeted additions to the club, and certainly all the players that are in first grade have added value to the team. And so I've just been so impressed with Dylan Walker as an addition to the team. He brings an element to, there's even where we've sort of lost Jermaine Hopgood, the attacking player, who could ball play, but that's now Dylan Walker. It's, and Hoppy's probably become more of a defensive workhorse than anything else. And I don't know whether that's just the way things have worked out, but we saw he was probably more of that last year. And admittedly, that was in a team that wasn't travelling too well, and then he got injured as well in
State of Origin.
In Origin, but I think Dylan's provided some of that additional playmaker around the ruck that Hopgood was providing when he first came to the Eels. The other significant thing too, John, I think with this Eels team at the moment is starting Riley Smith, having that energy right from the very beginning, and
now the conviction of playing for 80 minutes too. Jason
Yes.
Ryles is has taken the baby gloves off now. He's saying it's your team, go take control of it.
Yeah, and the thing about Riley, and it was said to me by a wise footy man that has always given me his words of wisdom over the years, and he said to me, in Riley Smith, when you have a player who is that fit, he possesses a skill that other players on the field don't possess, that level of fitness, because he's able to produce moments at the end of halves that other players can't produce, simply because he's got that extra gas in the tank to be able to do it. We saw that against the Dragons.
Golden point.
With that play to force the error in kick from Ilias.
Yep.
And we saw it countless times against the Tigers, where he was just chasing in defence, and just bringing the energy. I think it's important that we got that energy right from the start against the Tigers. So, yeah, we looked faster around the ruck, didn't we? It's so, and as much as, you know, Hopgood might be versatile and be able to jump in there to give, you know, I guess to what Ryles might have seen was protecting Riley at the start of the game, or allowing him to come in once some of the initial exchanges had finished. I think it says a lot that when Riley starts the game, that we start with the energy, rather than having someone who's not a full-time dummy half, you know, trying to do that role at the start of a game. So, so John, how do you see this game playing out?
Look, unfortunately, I think the Sharks are going to be a little bit more fired up and focused as opposed to what we saw against the West Tigers, because it wasn't just the clown show at the end where it was the worst situation of football I'd seen for a field goal in a long time, if not ever.
Zero footy IQ.
Oh, my goodness.
Zero.
It was the entire game, 60s, where, there was a strong wind out at Leichhardt that obviously aided the team that was running towards the bay. But the Sharks just made so many mistakes in that game. They were way off the pace. It felt like at times only Will Kennedy had turned up in that game. They had a couple of players that played all right too at the end of the day, but they were miles off their best. And obviously Fitzgibbon is going to look at the footage and have the team really fired up to turn it around against Parramatta. In saying that, though, there's a pretty good reason to feel confident here, 60s. Obviously, losing Kelma's not ideal, but this is a great chance for Charlie to come in and work alongside Mitchell Moses, which I don't think he's really had the opportunity to do mostly in his young career. And we were talking about Charlie's development in the news podcast on Tuesday. And perhaps this might be a huge opportunity for him, just being able to park himself next to Mitchell Moses, to a guy who's going to talk him and coach him through the game and get the best out of him. Looking at this Sharks team, you got to contain that front row. Adam Fanua-Blake, obviously one of the best front rowers in the code. Oregon Kaufusi, he's turned himself into a really nice first grader. And that'll be a strong 1-2 punch for Jack Williams and Junior Barlow to match up against. And they've still got Britton Nakora there. No Teague Wilton is a bit of a boon. Britton Nakora will match up against Gideon Katonga, I believe, 60s. So that's going to be a big assignment there for Gideon, as well as Parramatta's left edge. But you've got Charlie going up against Billy Burns instead of Teague Wilton, who has been a pretty damaging ball runner himself in the past. So I think you put the clamps, excuse me, on the front row, and that allows you to mitigate some of the damage that back line can do. Because Stone Street, Rami, and Iro and Molotalo is up there as one of the best 2-4s in the competition, before you even factor in the career best form of Will Kennedy. And they're the two big ones there. I think their bench is handy too. Talakai and Hamlin ULA alongside Hazelton are three very beefy boys that can take away that rotation battle. But in saying that, Moretti, Tuivasa, and Dury alongside Walker, who has been obviously an awesome pickup, they've been some of the Eels' most consistent and most impactful players this year. So that bench battle actually shapes up to be fascinating. But I look at that Sharks team and I think, geez, they are gettable. They, regardless of whether they're going to turn up better from what we saw last week, I look at that and say, yeah, decent halves pairing. Nico Hines obviously been very polarizing this year for his form, but Braden Trindle, talented half as well. Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses, they can match up. They can win that.
Yes.
Dummy half, Blake Brayley, very good dummy half. He definitely has the nod over Riley Smith, but they are similar players. So, Riley be up for the challenge there. And then across the forward pack, Sharks have the nod in some areas, I think. I mean, Britton Nakora is the best back rower in the game, no doubt, across the two teams. He is just supremely talented. But, Eels have got some handy players there too. And the bench is more experienced for the Sharks, but, geez, I love what the Eels have gotten out of that quartet there in Walker, Moretti, Dury, and Tuivasa. Even if Matty barely got the play last week because of the HIA, he's been good for the Eels this year. So, I don't know, 60s. This is a game up in Brisbane too. It's a neutral venue. Thankfully for both teams, they get the second game on the surface because you got the Ladies State of Origin first, right? That is being played up at Suncorp. And the field was already chopped up from last week, so that's big for both teams to be out there in the Friday slot there. They were laying a new pitch. They were tearing it up and relaying the pitch was the rumor, yes, because the field just got mega chopped up from that clash against the Bulldogs, between the Broncos and the Bulldogs. And, yeah, I don't know. I am fairly bullish in this game. I just feel like maybe we lose. Maybe we lose badly because the Sharks are a team capable of winning big games. But this could be the game that gets the ball rolling for the Eels. They're chasing their first consecutive win of the season. They've got Mitchell Moses back for his second game. No Zach Lomax sucks. No Kelma Tuilagi sucks, but that's the breaks. But I still think the guys that come in, Bowie Simonson, awesome. He has just been lights out. Charlie Guymer gets the chance to impress his coach and play alongside Mitchell Moses. There is a reason to think here, a very good reason to think that the Eels are going to be very competitive and maybe knock the Sharks over.
Well, we did it last year, and it was Mitch Moses' comeback game earlier in the year before Origin ended up taking him away and then providing the injury that finished his season. Will Kennedy's a player who was outstanding for the Sharks. You know, when he first came in, you would see splashes of what looked like David Peachey, and I thought, you know, he's maybe going to go down in the Sharks record as a player who was very similar to David Peachey, but I think he now overshadows him with respect to Peachey. I think Will Kennedy has been that good as a fullback for them. He was their outstanding player last week. They get very good value out of their back three, without doubt. You don't want to give their wingers an opportunity to score because they just know how to finish off a try. Bit disappointed that Iro comes back for this game.
Yes.
But look, very good pack of forwards. You've already sung the praises of Britton Nakora. He is
best line runner in the competition. He is just so good. He
really needs to be shut down because it's that speed and explosiveness of his runs. You know, runs great lines and just for a forward, the way he just accelerates into the line, it's phenomenal. And explosiveness is the only way that I could describe.
He's like
brings.
It's not the one-to-one comparison because Manu Ma'u was a very different player in terms of how aggressive and physical he was. But it's almost like if there are overlapping traits there, where if Manu was a sledgehammer, Britton's the scalpel, and he just dissects defenses with how he times and angles his runs. Has an incredible feel, and it's just something you can't coach. Some players instinctively, intuitively understand the game. And you obviously speak of players like JT, Jonathan Thurston, and Andrew Johns in the halves, but it's true for back rows and other positions too. And Britton Nakora, he just sees the flow of the defensive line and manages to pick it apart consistently. Phenomenal talent.
Yep. So, look, the Eels obviously have to win the middle against a very strong Sharks pack. Put the pressure on Nico Hines because, you know, I won't say that Nico goes missing because it's not that he goes missing, but if you apply the pressure to him, he's got some errors in his game that will suddenly, you know, reveal themselves. I think we really need to see I spoke about this after the result with St George earlier this season. We don't want to repeat of last week. We want to build on from last week. And I think that has to be the mindset of the Eels. Okay, good win last week. Now let's build on it. Let's work on this. Let's work on that. Because the game was far from perfect, but Ryles maybe couldn't have extracted too much more in terms of effort. It's probably a little bit in the way of finesse or fixing up, you know, the odd defensive error or mistake that might have been made in with discipline. Just like a real area of fine tuning. And I guess if you're talking about building on, you're talking about getting a little bit more cohesion in attack. It was the best that our attack had looked this season. It speaks for itself on the scoreboard anyway, if nothing else, because for the first time, the Eels were able to post a score. So, John, I think it's time for you to give your tips, and then I'll follow with mine.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love a huge blowout win of the Sharks, I think that on the back of that loss, they will be very, very competitive. And there's a realistic chance they beat the Parramatta Eels, to be perfectly honest. But I think this is an important game, too, that we didn't touch on, but how Jason Ryles manages his buys. It's a crucial part of the season, isn't it? If you can maintain momentum coming out of the buys, if you can reset off a loss coming out of the buy, how your boys handle that week off as a recharge rather than a chance to lose momentum. And we're going to find that out here on Friday. I'm going to back Jason Ryles to have the boys up for this one. I think the Parramatta Eels will win. Maybe, look, I want a big win. I want a big win, 60s. Maybe I'm going to be greedy. Let's go 36-18, which is very greedy because I think Cronulla are a better team than that, but that's not
How's the weather going to be up there
for
the
game?
game?
A quick gander because thank God they're not playing in Sydney. Brisbane weather is Friday night apparently going to be a bit cloudy but sunny. 15% chance of precipitation. And that goes through where we kick off at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, it'll be cool, 18 degrees, 5% chance of rain, but it's going to be humid. So, but cool but humid is pretty good conditions, to be honest. And you take
Okay,
those.
so we can say a dry track.
Yeah.
They're going to have.
Projected dry track up in Brisbane.
Yeah, that lends towards a big score from you, John.
Yes. So Eels 36-18. Going back to my team list here. First try scorer. Geez, it's hard to go past the Fox right now. I think if you're talking smart money, the Fox. If you're talking the interesting one, let's go Jack Williams up against his old club. That's a great narrative right there. Front row of the bookend getting over the line. Best on field again. If you're cheating, Mitchell Moses is just like smart money. But in terms of an interesting pick, who do I have here? Azari Yongi, Bailey Simonson. I'm going to hitch myself to the Will Penasini wagon against 60s. I feel like he's just building towards a big game, like a big game. So hopefully Will can dominate that talented Sharks backline. And he matches up. Is it against Ramian? Will's on our right. Is it Iroven? I'm just trying to think of how the Sharks line up. Whichever way, though, they're two very powerful centres there in Jesse and KL. So I will go for the fun pick there and Will Penasini. Big game from the young centre.
Okay, so I'm not going to be quite as extravagant with the score. I think probably something like 26-16.
Yeah.
Look, the Sharks are generally quite a good defensive outfit. So if we score 26 points, I think that will be outstanding.
Good day at the office. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the first try scorer, look, I would. If I was giving the punting tip, I'd probably give a player in the opposition an anytime try scorer one in Nakora. But for the Eels, first try scorer, again, you said the smart money is the Fox, and it would be, but we don't always go with the smart money with our tips here. You know what?
Case in point, my entire line of tipping, yes.
Last week, I got the punting tip in the preview correct with Iongi, so I'll go with him for first try scorer this week, and I'll double it. I'll double down on that for best on field and go with Iongi as best on field this week.
Nice.
So John, that just takes us out with the preview for the senior grades this week. For our listeners, don't forget that we continue with the series of special previews that we've been doing for about the last 6 weeks with the junior reps, with our special podcast that we will do there. A couple of guests that we will have on for that. And so stand by. When we will have that out maybe Thursday, late Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, Friday morning at the latest. So because we're doing recordings over 2 days for that particular one.
Not messing around with this one. We're giving you the biggest, best junior previews that you'll ever get anywhere. So enjoy.
Absolutely. And, of course, thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and to Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. John, thank you for your fine efforts again today. Thank you to all of our listeners. Don't forget the like and subscribe. Don't forget you can support us through clicking the link to Patreon and become a patron of the Cumberland Throw for just $5 a month. It's a small amount that will actually mean a lot for us. And apart from that, John, as always say, go you mighty Eels.